I'd been reborn into a novel, and I was the ultimate chump. I was the designated idiot side character, the guy with more money than God who still played the loyal simp for his Ice Queen fiancée, only to get stomped into the dirt by the story's real hero. Right now, that very same Ice Queen fiancée, who had just shot down my 99th proposal, was staring down at me, her eyes colder than a morgue slab. Ethan, are you done making a scene? This pathetic attempt to get my attention just makes me respect you even less. I laughed. I swirled the highball glass in my hand, the sharp scent of whiskey hitting my nose as the liquid caught the light of the crystal chandelier, throwing off a mocking glint. Then, right in front of her, I took the $1 million engagement ring and tossed it into the trash, like it was a gum wrapper. Ethan, are you done? Her voice was like a shard of ice, stabbing into my eardrum. I forced my eyes open. A hangover hammered against my skull, and the whole world seemed to tilt on its axis. The light from the crystal chandelier overhead was blinding, and through the glare, I could make out the silhouette of a devastatingly beautiful woman standing over me. She looked down her nose at me, her perfect face a mask of contempt, her eyes brimming with disgust and impatience. This pathetic attempt to get my attention just makes me respect you even less. The memories hit me like a floodgate bursting open. I, Ethan Cole, had been dropped into a book. I was now the character with my exact same name in the hit web novel The Dragon's Shadow, the story's biggest joke. The guy born into one of the country's wealthiest, most secretive families. Old money that made billionaires look middle class. Who hid his identity and spent 3 years as a complete doormat for the woman standing before me. The stunning CEO, Isabella Vance. All for what? To be unceremoniously crushed by the novel's protagonist, Kyle Ryder, and have his family's empire absorbed. The ultimate plot device. And this moment? This was right after the original Ethan's 99th proposal had been rejected. He tried to drink himself into oblivion and apparently succeeded, giving me, a 21st century corporate drone, the chance to take over. A scene. A low chuckle escaped my lips as I slowly pushed myself upright on the plush sofa. The whiskey had left my throat raw, but I could feel a completely different kind of energy waking up inside this body. Isabella's brow furrowed. She despised Ethan's perpetually groveling demeanor, but today she heard something in that laugh. Was that mockery? I ignored her, reaching for the highball glass on the coffee table. It wasn't some vintage Cabernet. It was filled with the top-shelf whiskey the old Ethan had been chugging. The fiery liquid slid down my throat, igniting a blaze in my chest. Isabella, I said, lifting my gaze to meet her icy stare. Do you really think you're worth it? Her pupils contracted. She looked like she'd just heard a dog speak Latin. For the first time, a flicker of genuine shock crossed her flawless features. For 3 years, Ethan Cole had been her puppet. He wouldn't just talk back. He barely dared to breathe too loudly in her presence, always walking on eggshells, terrified of displeasing her. Had he lost his mind? What did you say? She asked, convinced she must have misheard. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my pocket with my other hand and pulled out a small velvet box. I flipped it open. Inside, a massive pink diamond ring sat nestled in the fabric, throwing off a blinding sparkle under the lights. The Eternal Heart, custom piece by Cartier's lead designer, valued at $3 million. I stated, my tone flat, as if I were reading a weather report. If I remember correctly, this is what I used yesterday. A flicker of unease crossed Isabella's face. Of course, she remembered. Yesterday, in front of her entire company, Ethan had gotten down on one knee and proposed. She had been mortified, coldly rejecting him before sweeping away in her car, leaving him to the jeers of her employees. She scoffed, her mask of arrogance snapping back into place. What's your point? Trying to buy me? Ethan, I've told you before, I'm not that kind of shallow woman. Shallow. I savored the word. And then, as she watched in utter disbelief, I flicked my wrist. The $3 million Eternal Heart sailed through the air in a perfect, glittering arc. Clink! It landed, dead center, in the trash can in the corner of the room. The silence in the lavish penthouse suite was absolute. Isabella forgot to breathe. She stared at the trash can, unable to believe what she'd just seen. That was $3 million. He just threw it away. You're insane. she shrieked, her cool facade completely shattered. The old Ethan was insane. I'm not. I rose to my feet, looking down at her. The sheer pressure of my height made her instinctively take a step back. In that moment, a terrifying realization dawned on her. The man in front of her had changed. This wasn't the pathetic simp whose eyes were always pleading for approval. His gaze was like a hawk's, like a surgeon's scalpel, sharp enough to see right through her. His body, which used to be perpetually hunched in submission, was now ramrod straight. An inexplicable, crushing aura rolled off him, making her heart pound erratically. Isabella, listen closely. I spoke each word deliberately. My voice wasn't loud, but it struck her heart like a sledgehammer. As of this second, the engagement between us is over. Your so-called principles, the beauty you're so proud of. In my eyes, they're worthless. From now on, stay out of my sight. Otherwise, I curled my lip into a cold smirk. I might be tempted to throw you, in your crumbling little company, into the trash right along with it. Without another glance, I turned and walked toward the door. The implications of my last sentence hit Isabella like a ton of bricks, chilling her to the bone. She wanted to argue, to demand how I knew Vance Cosmetics was in trouble, but it felt like an invisible hand was squeezing her throat, choking off the words. All she could do was watch as that resolute back opened the door and vanished down the hall. A long moment passed before she snapped out of it. She scrambled over to the trash can, heedless of her image, and fished out the dirt-stained diamond ring. The sparkle of the stone was blindingly sharp now. For the first time in her life, a powerful sense of unease and panic washed over her. She felt like she had just lost something irreplaceable. I stepped out of the hotel, and the cool night air helped clear my head. Step one of reclaiming my life. Break off the engagement. Done. Next up, survive in this dog-eat-dog world. And while I'm at it, grind the story's soon-to-arrive protagonist into the dust. According to the novel's plot, right about now, the main character, Kyle Ryder, a former special ops soldier from some remote mountain training ground, armed with legendary medical skills and ancient martial arts, should have just arrived in Sterling City. And very soon, he would heroically save Isabella and kick off their story. And me, the ex-fiancé, I was slated to be the first major stepping stone he used to build his reputation. Yeah, I wasn't about to be cannon fodder in someone else's story. I pulled out the cheap, outdated phone that belonged to the original Ethan and scrolled to a number at the top of the contacts list. It was a number he'd never once called. The contact name was Mr. Peterson. This was the emergency contact the Cole family had left for him. That lovesick idiot, so desperate to maintain his average guy persona for Isabella, had spent 3 years suffering humiliation and working dead-end jobs rather than tap into an ounce of his family's power. What a waste. I dialed the number. It was answered on the first ring. Young master. A calm, respectful voice came through the line, tinged with a subtle, well-hidden mix of excitement and surprise. In 3 years, this was the first call he'd ever received from me. Mr. Peterson, it's me, I said simply. Young master, you finally. Where are you, sir? Shall I send a car to pick you up? Mr. Peterson's voice trembled slightly. No need. I'll give you 30 minutes. I want all files on Vance Cosmetics in Sterling City, including a detailed report on their current financial crisis. Mr. Peterson paused for a second on the other end, clearly surprised that his young master's first call in 3 years was about business. But he didn't question it. Yes, young master. It will be in your inbox within 15 minutes. True professionalism. Also, I added after a moment, arrange a residence for me. Something quiet with maximum privacy. And a car. Something low profile. Understood. The keys to the #1 villa in the Summit Estates and a car will be delivered to your current location at the Grand Sterling Hotel in 30 minutes. The vehicle is the latest model armored Phaeton. It looks nearly identical to a standard Passat. A small smile touched my lips. Talking to smart people was so much easier. One last thing. My voice turned cold. Mobilize all of our assets in Sterling City and put a tail on a man named Kyle Ryder. He should be arriving today. From the moment he sets foot in this city, I want real-time reports on his every move, every person he talks to, every word he says. Mr. Peterson's breathing hitched. Kyle Ryder, he repeated, his tone growing serious. Young master, do you have a history with this person. Anyone who warranted this level of attention from the young master, enough to activate the family's entire intelligence network, was not to be taken lightly. We will soon, I chuckled. He wants to take what's mine and use me as a stepping stone. Mr. Peterson's voice instantly became lethal. He's courting death. Rest assured, young master. From this moment on, he'll be a fly under a microscope. His every move will be under our control. Excellent. I hung up, hailed a cab, and gave the driver an address. It was a rundown apartment in an old building that the original Ethan had rented to be closer to Isabella's office. If I was going to make a clean break with the past, it had to be absolute. When I came downstairs with a single suitcase containing a few cheap outfits, a black Volkswagen Phaeton was parked silently under a streetlight. A middle-aged man in a black suit and white gloves with a stern expression saw me and immediately bowed. Young master, I am the regional manager for Sterling City. I am here to serve you on Mr. Peterson's orders. He presented a set of keys and a brand new, high-end smartphone with both hands. These are the keys to the #1 villa at the Summit Estates and your new phone. All relevant contacts have been preloaded, and it features the highest level of encryption. Mr. Peterson requested that you destroy your old device. I nodded, took the items, and slipped into the back seat of the Phaeton. The car pulled smoothly into traffic. I powered on the new phone and opened my email. An encrypted file was already there. Report on Vance Cosmetics. I opened it. Cold, hard data and analysis filled the screen. Vance Cosmetics, once a star corporation in Sterling City. 6 months ago, a disastrous decision to invest in a failed overseas project had shattered their capital chain. Now, the company was just a hollow shell, kept afloat only by Isabella desperately robbing Peter to pay Paul. The bank had already rejected their loan applications 3 times. A gentle push was all it would take to bring the whole glittering facade crashing down. And at the end of the report was a bombshell. The second largest shareholder and vice president of Vance Cosmetics, Leo Wells, had been in frequent contact with Troy King, the heir to King Corp., one of Sterling City's corporate giants. My eyes narrowed. Troy King. In the book, he was your standard arrogant, rich kid villain who had been lusting after Isabella for ages. Looks like a classic drama of kicking someone when they're down to steal their company. And the girl was about to play out. And in the original story, it was precisely during this crisis that Kyle Ryder made his grand entrance. He used his miraculous medical skills to cure Troy King's father of a hidden illness, not only earning the King family's eternal gratitude and forcing them to back off, but also winning Isabella's heart in the process. A perfect play to win fame, fortune, and the girl. Too bad for him. The scriptwriter has changed. I picked up the phone and dialed Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson set up a meeting for me with the chairman of King Corp., Richard King. Just say an old friend's son wishes to pay his respects. Young master, shall I specify that it is a friend of the Cole family? No need, I smiled. He'll take the meeting, because I remembered a passing detail from the book. Years ago, Richard King had suffered a severe injury that left him with a chronic, incurable condition, a secret he'd kept from the world. In my family, the Coles just so happened to be a centuries-old dynasty of master physicians. The hero wants to save the day. Sorry, I'm taking center stage. Isabella didn't sleep a wink. She sat on the cold floor, clutching the eternal heart tightly in her hand. Ethan's parting words echoed in her mind. I might be tempted to throw you and your crumbling little company into the trash right along with it. How did he know the company's capital chain was broken? It was a secret known only to her and a few key executives. She'd even hidden it from her own parents. Ethan, the man who used to follow her around like a puppy, who spent his entire savings to buy her designer bags, who clumsily made her inedible chicken soup when she was sick. How could he possibly know these kinds of business secrets? An unprecedented wave of panic wrapped around her heart like a vine. She shot to her feet and dialed her assistant, her voice sharp with anxiety. I want a background check. Now, on Ethan Cole. I want everything, his family, his income sources for the last 3 years, all of it. An hour later, her assistant's call plunged her into an even deeper abyss of fear. Ms. Vance, there's nothing. What do you mean, there's nothing? Isabella screamed, losing her composure. His records. It's like they've been professionally scrubbed. We pulled every string we have. All we can find is that he appeared in Sterling City 3 years ago with a single bank account containing a few $1,000s. Beyond that, it's a complete blank. It's like he's a ghost. A complete blank. Isabella's arm fell limp, the phone slipping from her grasp and clattering to the floor. How could a person's past be a blank slate? Unless a power far beyond her comprehension had deliberately erased it. Just then, her phone rang again. It was the company's vice president, Leo Wells. Isabella, it's bad. Leo's voice was frantic. King Corp just unilaterally terminated all of our contracts, and several of our downstream suppliers just cut us off at the same time. Our production lines are about to shut down. What? The room spun around Isabella. King Corp was their biggest partner. Them pulling out was a death sentence. Why? Isn't Troy King still chasing after you? Why would they make a move now, she demanded. I don't know. The rumor is the heir, Troy King, got beat up at the Elysium Club today. Beat up? Isabella was stunned. Yeah, and they're saying the guy who did it was Ethan Cole. Boom! A thunderclap went off inside Isabella's head. Ethan! It was Ethan again. He hit Troy King? How dare he? Does he have any idea who Troy King is? Does he not realize that King Corp's retaliation would completely crush her already fragile company? He's trying to ruin me. This is his revenge. Isabella muttered to herself, her face ashen. She had assumed Ethan's departure was just another manipulative game, a new way to get her attention. Now she understood. This was a calculated attack. He was going to personally destroy everything she had built. No, she couldn't let this happen. Like a drowning woman grasping at a piece of driftwood, Isabella's mind suddenly flashed to one person. Kyle Ryder. Just yesterday afternoon, she'd been harassed by a few thugs on the street. And it was this man, Kyle, who had stepped in to save her. He was an incredible fighter, with a commanding presence and an air of unshakable confidence. He'd mentioned he was new to Sterling City and had nowhere to stay. On a whim, Isabella had given him her business card and told him to call if he needed anything. Now, he was perhaps the only one who could help her. With trembling hands, she dialed the unfamiliar number. Hello, is this Mr. Ryder? This is Isabella Vance. I'm in trouble. Can you help me? On the other end of the line, a smirk played on Kyle Ryder's lips. The fish had taken the bait. Ms. Vance, please, tell me what's wrong. Anything Kyle Ryder, can do, I will do without hesitation. The Elysium Club, one of Sterling City's most exclusive private lounges. I sat on the sofa in a private suite, methodically wiping my fingers with a cloth napkin. On the floor, Troy King, the notorious playboy heir to King Corp, was curled up like a beaten dog. A bright red handprint was emblazoned on his face, and a trickle of blood ran from the corner of his mouth. The handful of bodyguards he'd brought with him were scattered around the room, groaning in pain. Do you have any FING idea who I am? You hit me. Troy whimpered, clutching his cheek and glaring at me with venomous eyes, all bark and no bite. Just 10 minutes ago, he'd been in this very room with a girl on each arm, arrogantly plotting with his underlings how to swallow Vance Cosmetics and its beautiful CEO whole. The next second, I kicked the door in. I don't just know who you are. I also know that you're conspiring with Leo Wells, the VP of Vance Cosmetics, to short their stock and buy out the company for pennies on the dollar. I smirked. My voice wasn't loud, but it made Troy's pupils shrink. That was his biggest secret. How could this guy possibly know? Who the hell are you? Troy's voice was now laced with fear. I'm the person who decides whether you and your father spend the rest of your lives in a hospital bed or in a coffin. I picked up a teacup from the table and blew on it gently. The sound of rushed footsteps echoed from the hallway. A portly, furious-looking middle-aged man burst in, flanked by a phalanx of security. It was the chairman of King Corp himself, Richard King. Who dares to touch my son? Richard roared as he entered, his eyes turning bloodshot the moment he saw Troy crumpled on the floor. Troy saw him and scrambled over like he'd found a savior. Dad, it was him. This bastard hit me. Kill him. I want him dead. Richard King's gaze locked onto me, burning with the fury of a cornered lion. His bodyguards, all of them clearly trained professionals, moved to surround me. The atmosphere in the room dropped to freezing. And yet, I remained seated calmly on the sofa, even taking a moment to sip my tea. Mr. King, such a temper. Are you in a hurry to shorten your lifespan? I asked mildly. You're dead, kid. Richard laughed, a truly terrifying sound. No one in Sterling City has ever dared to talk to me like that, break his arms and legs, and throw him in the river to feed the fish. The bodyguards moved as one, lunging toward me like a pack of wolves. I didn't even bother to look up. Just as their fists were about to connect, a voice cut through the tension. Stop! An old but powerful voice echoed from the doorway. The door was pushed open again, and Mr. Peterson, dressed in a sharp, traditional suit and leaning on a dragon-headed cane, walked in slowly. He was alone, but his mere presence, his powerful, immovable aura, made the temperature in the room plummet even further. Richard King saw Mr. Peterson and froze, his face draining of color. He didn't know Mr. Peterson personally, but he recognized him. That commanding presence. He'd seen it once, 20 years ago, from a distance, in the orbit of one of the most powerful men in Washington, D.C. It was a sight he had never forgotten. You are. Richard's voice trembled, and a cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Mr. Peterson ignored him, walking directly to me and bowing slightly. Young master, my apologies for the delay. That single phrase, young master, exploded like a thunderclap in the ears of Richard and Troy King. Richard's legs went weak, and he nearly collapsed. For this legendary figure to bow and call someone young master, who in God's name was this young man? He didn't dare to think. He didn't dare to ask. He only knew that today he had kicked a steel plate big enough to shatter his entire empire. Dad, what are you afraid of? He's a nobody. Kill him. Troy was still screaming, oblivious to the shift in power. Smack! A crisp, loud slap echoed through the room. Richard had spun around and backhanded his own son across the face with all his might. You worthless brat. Shut your mouth. He then turned, and without a moment's hesitation, dropped to his knees in front of me with a thud. Mr. Cole. I was blind. I failed to raise my son properly. Please, sir, have mercy, forgive us this once. Richard King began to kowtow, his forehead hitting the marble floor with dull, sickening thuds. The suite fell deathly silent. Troy clutched his face, completely stunned into silence. The menacing bodyguards were pale with fear, frozen in place. I put down my teacup, stood, and walked over to Richard King. Mr. King, tell me, do you often wake up in the middle of the night with a crushing pain in your chest? A difficulty breathing, as if thousands of ants are chewing on your heart? Richard King's head shot up, his face a mask of pure terror. That was his deepest secret, the hidden illness that the world's best doctors couldn't diagnose, let alone cure. How did he know? And the pain gets worse when it rains, doesn't it? I leaned in, my voice a demonic whisper that only he could hear. I can cure you, or I can let you die from a massive heart attack tonight. Now, do you still want to throw me in the river to feed the fish? Richard King's body began to shake uncontrollably. A wave of fear, more intense than any he had ever known, shot up from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. This young man wasn't human. He was the devil. He not only possessed an unimaginable background, but he had seen through Richard's deepest secret and laid out his life and death in a single sentence. Mr. Cole, divine doctor, I was wrong. I was so wrong. Richard was sobbing now, banging his head on the floor even harder. Please, save me. If you can cure me, I, Richard King, will be your loyal servant for life. All of Kingcorp will be yours. Troy, witnessing this, was completely catatonic. He watched as his father, the undisputed king of Sterling City's business world, knelt and begged like a dog. His entire worldview crumbled to dust. He finally understood what kind of entity he had provoked. That won't be necessary. I reached out and gently patted Richard King's shoulder. A warm, powerful energy flowed from my palm into his body. Richard felt the cold, stagnant presence that had been torturing his heart for years melt away like ice in the sun, instantly replaced by a feeling of relief so profound he almost cried out. He looked up at me, his expression transformed from terror to fervent worship. A miracle! This was nothing short of a miracle. As of today, Kingcorp is mine, I said, retracting my hand, my tone casual. Yes, of course. I'll have my lawyers draw up the transfer documents immediately. Richard agreed without a shred of hesitation, looking as if he'd just won the lottery. Trading his company for his life and the protection of a godlike figure, it was the best deal he'd ever made. As for him, my eyes fell on the trembling form of Troy King. Troy yelped and crawled over, hugging my leg. Mr. Cole, I was wrong. I'm human garbage. Please spare me. I'll never do it again. I won't kill you, but you won't get off scot-free. I glanced at Mr. Peterson. He understood immediately, his voice cold as ice. Break both of his legs and ship him to a mine in Africa. Let him learn the meaning of hardship. No, please no. Troy's pig-like squeals were quickly muffled as two men in black suits gagged him and dragged him out of the room like a sack of garbage. Richard King stood by and watched his son being taken away without daring to say a word. In fact, he felt a sense of relief. For his son to only have his legs broken, to be allowed to live, was a sign of Mr. Cole's immense mercy. With that business concluded, I sat back down on the sofa as if I'd just finished a minor chore. Mr. Peterson, any movement from Kyle Ryder? Mr. Peterson reported respectfully, young master. He has made contact with Isabella Vance. Just a few minutes ago, she called him for help. He has agreed to come here and have a chat with the chairman of King Corp. Oh, I raised an eyebrow. He works fast. According to our intelligence, this Kyle Ryder is extremely arrogant. He believes that by curing Richard King, he can make King Corp submit, thereby showing off his power to Ms. Vance, Mr. Peterson said with a hint of disdain. Let him come, I smiled. I'm very interested to see the look on his face when he arrives, full of confidence, only to find that his prey is already my dog. It will certainly be a sight to behold, Mr. Peterson agreed, a faint smile on his lips. I stood and straightened my collar. Let's go. The show is about to start, and we, the audience, should find some good seats. Mr. Peterson knew exactly what I meant. He walked to a corner of the suite and pushed open a hidden door. Behind it was an observation room with a one-way mirror offering a perfect view of the suite outside, while remaining completely invisible from it. I walked into the observation room and settled onto the sofa. The show was about to begin. When Isabella and Kyle arrived at the Elysium Club, they were both on edge. Isabella's anger was directed at me. She blamed me for all of her company's current troubles, seeing it as my revenge. She desperately needed a force to counter me, to prove that she could succeed without me. Kyle was her only hope. Kyle's anger stemmed from his innate arrogance. In his eyes, some local business group daring to trouble the woman he had set his sights on was an act of profound disrespect. He was here to deliver a swift, decisive lesson and show the chairman of King Corp who really ran this city. Isabella, don't worry. With me here, no one will lay a finger on you, Kyle said, flashing her a confident smile as they walked through the club's grand entrance. His handsome features, athletic build, and domineering presence were undeniably attractive. Isabella looked at him, and some of her anxiety melted away. Kyle, I'm counting on you. A server led them to the suite I had just vacated. Mr. King is inside, the server said with a bow. Kyle sneered. Without even thinking of knocking, he kicked the door clean open. Richard King, get your ass out here, he bellowed. But the furious reaction he expected never came. Inside, Richard King was sitting alone, perfectly composed, as if waiting for them. Hearing Kyle shout, he didn't get angry. Instead, he stood up, a warm, enthusiastic smile spreading across his face. You must be Kyle Ryder. It's an honor to finally meet you. Please have a seat. This threw both Kyle and Isabella for a loop. What was going on? This wasn't a confrontation. It was a fan meeting. Kyle's brow furrowed. Something was wrong, but he maintained his arrogant posture. Cut the crap. I'm here about Vance Cosmetics. You will immediately resume all contracts and apologize to Ms. Vance. His tone was absolute, like a king issuing a decree. Contracts. Richard King chuckled as if he'd heard a joke. Mr. Ryder, I think you're mistaken. King Corp is no longer mine to command. What do you mean? Kyle's eyes narrowed. As of half an hour ago, I transferred my entire stake in King Corp to my savior and benefactor, Mr. Ethan Cole. Richard said each word with reverence and a fanatical gleam in his eye. Ethan Cole. It was him again. Isabella swayed, nearly collapsing. He bought King Corp. How was that possible? King Corp was a corporate giant worth billions. Where did he get that kind of money? Wasn't he just some poor simp who did nothing but orbit her? Kyle's face darkened instantly. He'd heard the name Ethan Cole several times from Isabella today. A pathetic, discarded ex-fiancé who didn't know his place. He'd assumed this was an ant he could crush at any time. He never imagined that this ant would beat him to the punch. Where is Ethan Cole? Tell him to get out here and face me. Kyle's voice was laced with killing intent. Insolence. Richard King's expression hardened. Is Mr. Cole's name something you are fit to speak? He had fully embraced his role as my loyal dog. His master's dignity was not to be trifled with. You have 3 seconds to apologize to Mr. Cole. Otherwise, don't blame me for what happens next. Richard pointed a trembling finger at Kyle, his eyes blazing. Kyle burst out laughing. Good. Very good. A dog who just got a new owner already dares to bark at me. It seems I need to teach you a lesson about who you're messing with. Before he finished speaking, his body blurred into motion, reappearing instantly in front of Richard King, his hand shooting out like a vice to grab his throat. In the observation room, I took a slow sip of tea, a cold smirk on my face. Finally, he makes his move. Just as Kyle's hand was about to close around Richard's neck, a dark figure materialized silently between them. It was Mr. Peterson. He had emerged from the observation room at some point and now stood there. With no wasted motion, he simply raised a hand to meet Kyle's thunderous attack. Thud! The sound of their palms connecting was a dull, heavy impact. The sneer on Kyle's face froze. He felt as if he had just grabbed a red-hot iron. A scorching, unbelievably powerful inner energy shattered his own defenses and surged violently through his veins. Kyle flew backward as if hit by a truck, slamming hard against the wall before crumpling to the floor, coughing up a mouthful of blood. He stared at Mr. Peterson, his eyes wide with disbelief. A grandmaster. You're a martial arts grandmaster. He himself was a skilled martial artist, a top-tier expert in the conventional world. But this unassuming old man had nearly crippled him with a single move. He had to be at the grandmaster level at least. How could a city like this have a grandmaster level fighter, and one who was clearly someone subordinate? Mr. Peterson lowered his hand, standing impassively over Kyle, his expression like he was looking at a dead man. You dare disrespect the young master. You will be disciplined. Those cold words sealed Kyle's fate. Richard King, after a moment of shock, grinned ferociously. This was the perfect opportunity to prove his loyalty to his new master. He lunged forward and began slapping the struggling Kyle across the face, back and forth, with all his might. Smack! 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 The sharp sounds echoed through the suite. That's for disrespecting Mr. Cole. That's for your arrogance. Who the hell do you think you are? Richard cursed as he slapped, putting his entire body into it. Kyle, his inner energy thrown into chaos by Mr. Peterson's strike, was too weak to resist, forced to endure the most profound humiliation of his life. Several of his teeth were knocked out, his mouth filled with blood, and his face swelled into an unrecognizable pulp. His pride and confidence were replaced by pure, venomous hatred. Isabella, standing by the door, was completely frozen, her mind a total blank. Kyle, the man she had seen as an invincible, godlike figure, was now being pinned to the ground and slapped around like a dog by Richard King, a man she had always despised. And it was all because of a single sentence from that mysterious old man. That old man, who called Ethan, young master. The series of shocks drained all the color from her face, and her body began to tremble. Just then, the hidden door to the suite swung open. I strolled out from the shadows and into the light. Even a dog's master should be respected, I said, looking down at the mangled mess that was Kyle Ryder. My gaze flicked to the petrified Isabella, a smirk playing on my lips. You dare to touch my leftovers. You dare to try and take what's mine? Kyle, who gave you the nerve? My voice wasn't loud, but it detonated like a bomb in both Kyle's and Isabella's minds. Kyle forced his swollen eyes open, which were now just tiny slits, and glared at me with infinite hatred and confusion. Your leftovers? He rasped, looking at the deathly pale Isabella. Isabella flinched, instinctively wanting to deny it. When had she ever been Ethan's? They were finished. But when her eyes met my mocking gaze, the words died in her throat. She suddenly understood. Ethan was staking his claim. Not on her. On Kyle. He didn't care about her. He was just telling Kyle that Isabella Vance was a woman he had thrown away. The treasure you, Kyle Ryder, are fighting for is nothing more than the trash Ethan Cole discarded. It was the ultimate humiliation, far crueler than any physical blow. Ethan Cole, don't you go too far, Kyle roared, struggling to rise. As the chosen one, the hero of the story, he had never suffered such an insult. Go too far. I laughed, a bright, cheerful sound. I'm not just going to go too far. I'm going to step on you. I lifted my foot, stopping my gleaming leather shoe just an inch from his face. Oh, right. You're filthy. I lowered my foot, pulled a handkerchief from my pocket, leisurely wiped the tip of my shoe, and then dropped the cloth onto Kyle's face. The gesture was elegant, but dripping with contempt. Pfft. The rage and humiliation were too much. Kyle coughed up another spray of blood and passed out cold. The great Dragon King of the original story, taken down in the most humiliating way possible by me, the villainous side character, less than 24 hours after his debut. I looked at his unconscious form without a shred of emotion. This was only the beginning. I would drag him down from his pedestal, piece by piece. I would take his destiny, his lucky breaks, his harem of beautiful women, and make them all my own. I would teach him the true meaning of despair. My gaze shifted to the only other person still standing in the room. Isabella. She stared at me, her expression a chaotic mix of shock, fear, regret, and a sliver of humiliated defiance she herself didn't recognize. Not long ago, this man had knelt at her feet, begging for her affection. Now he stood on a mountain, looking down on her, controlling everyone's fate. The dizzying reversal was driving her insane. Ethan, she managed, her voice dry and cracked. Can we talk? She tried to force a smile, but it looked more painful than a sob. Talk. I raised an eyebrow. About what? Your company that's about to go bankrupt, or the fact that you're a woman who broke an engagement? Isabella's face flushed crimson. I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you like that. Can you just give me one more chance? The engagement. We can still go through with it. To save her company, to save everything she had, she was willing to cast aside all her pride. She believed that Ethan's 3 years of devotion couldn't have just vanished. She thought this was all an act, a charade to force her to this very moment of submission. If she just gave in, he would go back to being her loyal puppy. She was wrong. I walked slowly towards her, looking at her tear-streaked, pitiful face. I had to admit, the novel's main female lead was a knockout. But to me, no amount of beauty could hide a selfish, rotten soul. I reached out and gently lifted her chin. Isabella's body stiffened, but she didn't resist, instead meeting my gaze with a flicker of hope and desperation. Isabella, remember this. I leaned in close to her ear, my voice a soft whisper only she could hear. A dog only goes back to a bone its master has thrown away when it's starving. And I am not a dog. As for you, I let go of her and took a step back, my eyes raking over her from head to toe as if I were inspecting merchandise. Right now, you're not even qualified to be my dog. Isabella froze completely. The blood drained from her face, leaving it a ghastly shade of gray. Humiliation, absolute and suffocating, washed over her like a tidal wave. She wanted to scream, to fight, to slap the man in front of her. But she didn't dare, because in my eyes, she saw nothing but ice-cold indifference. It was the look one gives to an inanimate object. She finally, despairingly, realized the truth. Ethan was truly, completely over her. There wasn't a single shred of affection left. Mr. Peterson, I said, not looking at her again. Young master, take out the trash. This one and that woman. Yes, sir. Mr. Peterson waved a hand. 2 security guards stepped forward. One hauled up the unconscious Kyle, while the other walked impassively toward Isabella. Out, the guard said, his voice flat. Isabella shuddered. She took one last look at the back of the man she could now never hope to reach, then walked out of the suite in a daze. Every step felt like walking on broken glass. She knew that in that moment, she hadn't just lost Ethan. She had lost her pride, her company, and her entire future. The world was finally quiet. I sat back down on the sofa and picked up the now-cold cup of tea. Richard. Yes. Mr. Cole, your orders. Richard King snapped to attention, bowing low. Starting today, King Corp will use its full power to crush Vance Cosmetics. I want it completely wiped from Sterling City within a week. Understood. Richard agreed without hesitation. He had planned on acquiring the company anyway. Now he was just following orders and currying favor with his new master. It was a win-win. Also, I added, this Kyle Ryder has some training in martial arts. Keep a close watch on him, especially any connections he might try to use for help. For example, the Serenity Clinic in the South District. The Serenity Clinic was another key opportunity for Kyle in the original story. The owner was a medical fanatic who, after a contest of skills, was so blown away by Kyle's abilities that he not only gave him the clinic, but also his beautiful granddaughter. Since it was Kyle's opportunity, it was now mine. Rest assured, Mr. Cole, we have a citywide net in place. He couldn't escape our sight even if he turned into a fly. Richard promised, thumping his chest. I nodded, satisfied with his attitude. Go, get it done. As for your condition, I'll permanently cure it in a month. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Thank you. Richard bowed repeatedly, as if granted a royal pardon, before backing out of the room. Only Mr. Peterson and I remained. Young master, this Kyle Ryder has the favor of fate. I fear he won't be defeated so easily, Mr. Peterson said, a note of concern in his voice. I know, I said, putting down my teacup. He's the protagonist of this world, a cockroach that refuses to die. But what do you think will happen when I steal his destiny, piece by piece? When I shatter his confidence again and again? When I seize every opportunity meant for him? Do you think fate will still smile upon him then? A sharp light glinted in Mr. Peterson's eyes. Undermine his foundation and crush his spirit. A brilliant strategy, young master. I just smiled. Crush his spirit. No, I just wanted to see the look of absolute despair on his face as he fell from grace. Just then, my new phone vibrated. It was an encrypted message from Mr. Peterson's intelligence network. Target Kyle Ryder, taken from a club by Isabella Vance. Admitted to Sterling City General Hospital. Diagnosis: multiple soft tissue contusions, minor concussion, severe internal energy disruption. Additionally, Isabella Vance used her connections to contact Dr. Amelia Hayes of the Serenity Clinic. Dr. Hayes is expected to arrive at the hospital for a consultation within 30 minutes. Amelia Hayes, another major female character from the book. A gentle, kind-hearted angel in a white coat, a master of acupuncture. Her admiration for Kyle's medical prowess eventually led to her joining his harem. A cold smirk spread across my face. Mr. Peterson, get the car. We're going to Sterling City General. Young master, you intend to... Kyle wants to stage a comeback. I stood, brushing non-existent dust from my clothes. I'm not even going to let him get out of the tutorial level. You want to see a divine doctor? Then I'll show you what a true god of medicine looks like. Sterling City General Hospital, VIP wing. Kyle Ryder lay on the hospital bed, his expression so dark it could curdle milk. The swelling on his face had been iced, but it still looked like a lumpy, misshapen pumpkin. The Grandmaster's energy had wrecked his internal systems, making it impossible for him to use his martial arts for the foreseeable future. This was the greatest defeat and humiliation he had suffered since coming down from the mountains. Ethan Cole. Mr. Peterson. He ground his teeth, repeating our names, the hatred in his eyes practically glowing. I, Kyle Ryder, swear that I will repay today's humiliation 100 times over. I will make you wish you were never born. Isabella sat in a chair beside him, a chill running down her spine as she watched his contorted face. She was caught between a rock and a hard place. Having offended Ethan, her company was on the brink of collapse. Her only hope was that Kyle could, like a true novel protagonist, rise from the ashes and crush Ethan. That was why she had called it her last favor to bring in Sterling City's renowned young medical prodigy, Dr. Amelia Hayes. Kyle, please try to calm down. You need to rest, Isabella said softly. I've asked Dr. Hayes from the Serenity Clinic to come. Her acupuncture is incredible. She'll be able to help you recover quickly. Hearing the doctor's name, Kyle's expression softened slightly. He'd heard of the Serenity Clinic and knew it was a respected institution with a long history. "Thank you," he grunted through his teeth. Just then, the door to the room opened. A young woman in a white lab coat walked in. She had a gentle air about her, with delicate, gold-rimmed glasses perched on her nose. She looked to be in her early 20s, with a flawless complexion and kind eyes, and she carried a faint, pleasant scent of medicinal herbs. This was the heir to the Serenity Clinic, Dr. Amelia Hayes. "Isabella," Amelia said, greeting her friend first, before her eyes fell on the man in the bed. When she saw Kyle's swollen, bruised face, her elegant brows knitted together. "He's this badly injured?" "Amelia, please, you have to help him," Isabella urged. Amelia nodded, walked to the bedside, and placed her slender fingers on Kyle's wrist, closing her eyes to concentrate. After a moment, she opened them, a hint of surprise in her gaze. "This is a very strange injury. The person who did this possesses an incredibly powerful and aggressive form of inner energy. It's completely destroyed the balance of your own systems. I've only ever read about a technique like this in my grandfather's medical texts. It's called the scorching sun technique." Kyle was impressed. This young woman was skilled. She'd identified the root of his injury with a single touch. A spark of hope ignited within him. "Dr. Hayes, is there a cure?" Amelia pondered for a moment. "There is a way. It would require the 9-cycle yang restoration needle technique combined with a special herbal bath from my clinic. But it will be a slow process. It would take at least a month for you to fully recover your strength." "A month?" Kyle's face went black. "A month?" By then, Ethan would own the city. He couldn't wait a month. He needed revenge now. "Isn't there a faster way?" he pressed. Amelia shook her head apologetically. "Your injuries are too severe. Forcing a faster recovery would cause permanent damage and could even cripple you for life." Kyle's fist clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. Was he really going to have to hide like a coward for a month? Just as the atmosphere in the room grew heavy, a lazy voice drifted in from the doorway. "Who says there isn't a faster way?" Everyone turned. There I was, leaning against the doorframe, hands in my pockets, a playful smile on my face. "Ethan!" Isabella and Kyle exclaimed at the same time, their eyes filled with shock and animosity. What was he doing here? Amelia just looked at me, a stranger who had just walked in, with a confused expression. I ignored the two losers and fixed my gaze on Amelia, looking her over with interest. Yep, definitely a 9.5 out of 10. Gentle demeanor, great figure. She fit the bill for a main love interest. "You're Amelia Hayes?" I asked. "I am. And you are?" She replied politely, though her eyes were wary. "The 9-cycle yang restoration technique is a temporary fix at best." I shook my head, strolling into the room as if I owned the place and pulling up a chair. What he was hit with was my family's unique scorching sun technique, not some common imitation. This energy is like a parasite. It will continuously burn away at his meridians. Your needlework can suppress it for a while, but after a month, even if he regains his strength, his potential will be capped forever. My words landed like a bombshell in Amelia's mind. Scorching sun technique? My family, she'd never heard of it. But for some reason, coming from this man, his words held an unshakable authority. She looked back at Kyle, and this time, noticed a faint, dark aura deep between his eyebrows. It was a sign of a deep-seated ailment beyond the help of conventional medicine. She hadn't even noticed it before. How do you know all this?" Amelia's voice trembled slightly. This man was her age, but his insight and diagnostic eye were far beyond her own. They were even beyond her grandfather's. "Because the person who injured him was one of my family's servants," I said offhandedly, as if it was nothing. Then I turned my smiling gaze to the stunned Kyle. "Want to be cured? It's simple. Get on your knees and beg me." You could have heard a pin drop in a room. Isabella and Amelia stared at me like I was a lunatic. Making Kyle, this proud, defiant man, kneel and beg? You might as well just kill him. Sure enough, Kyle's face turned a deep shade of purple. He struggled to sit up, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Cole, in your dreams, I, Kyle Ryder, would rather die than kneel to you. Is that so?" I shrugged, unimpressed. I admire a man with principles. I stood up and walked over to Amelia, plucking an acupuncture needle from her breast pocket. Nice needle. A shame the person using it is still an amateur. Amelia flinched back from the sudden closeness, a blush rising on her cheeks, but she was more stunned by the sheer arrogance of my words. She had been hailed as a medical genius since childhood. Her acupuncture skills were legendary in Sterling City. Today, she'd been proven wrong twice. First by Kyle's injury, and now by this mysterious man telling her she was an amateur. A spark of defiance lit in her eyes. What makes you say that? This. With a flick of my wrist, the thin silver needle became a blur between my fingers, moving so fast it was almost invisible. Vim! A faint humming sound filled the air. The tail of the needle was vibrating so fast it was audibly resonating. Energy channeling, needle humming. Amelia gasped, her beautiful eyes widening as she stared at the needle in my hand as if witnessing a miracle. To make a needle hum with pure energy was the mark of a true master of the craft, a skill only spoken of in legends. Her own grandfather, a master who had dedicated his life to the art, could only manage to make the tip of a needle feel warm. And this man could make it sing. The level of skill was terrifying. I ignored her shock and, with a flick of my finger, sent the needle flying. Thwip! It shot across the room like a silver streak and embedded itself perfectly in a pressure point on Kyle's chest. It didn't even pierce his hospital gown, passing through the fabric to hit the mark flawlessly. Arf! Kyle let out an inhuman scream and arched off the bed, his body convulsing violently as if 1,000 knives were carving him up from the inside. A plume of black, foul-smelling smoke rose from the top of his head. What? What did you do to him? Isabella shrieked, thinking I was killing him. Shut up, you idiot. I shot her a cold glance. I'm saving him. Amelia, snapping out of her daze, rushed forward and grabbed Kyle's wrist again to check his pulse. This time, her expression morphed from shock to pure, fanatical worship. My God, it's unbelievable, she whispered. With a single needle, he drew out all of the scorching sun energy from Kyle's body. That's the dragon guiding needle technique, a legendary technique that was thought to be lost forever. She looked up at me, and the way she saw me had completely changed. It was the look a novice gives a grandmaster, filled with reverence and awe. A few seconds later, Kyle's convulsions stopped. He collapsed back onto the bed, gasping for air, his body soaked in sweat. But he could feel it clearly. The burning agony that had been tormenting him was gone. A feeling of profound relief flowed through his body. His injury was mostly healed. He looked at me, his expression a tangled mess of hatred, resentment, and a deep, undeniable fear. This man wasn't just powerful and well-connected. His own personal abilities were on a level he couldn't even comprehend. His medicine, his power, his influence. Everything Kyle had prided himself on was a complete joke in front of Ethan Cole. So, do you still think I'm dreaming? I walked to the bedside, looking down at him. Kyle's lips trembled. He couldn't speak. Dignity or life. In the face of absolute power, his pride was worthless. With a great struggle, under the incredulous stares of Isabella and Amelia, he rolled off the bed. Then, with all the strength he could muster, he slowly knelt before me. I was wrong. Seeing Kyle kneeling on the floor, trembling, I smiled. That's more like it. A protagonist should know when to bend. You kneel to me today, so you could try to crush me tomorrow. Too bad for you. There won't be a tomorrow. Very good. I nodded, then turned to the petrified Amelia. Watch closely. This is the real 9-cycle yang restoration. Before I even finished speaking, 9 silver needles had appeared between my fingers. Without pausing, my hands became a blur of motion. The 9 needles, as if with minds of their own, whistled through the air and embedded themselves simultaneously into 9 major pressure points on Kyle's back. Guide the energy, cross the barrier, return to the source, become one. I chanted the ancient words, my hands hovering in the air, my fingers moving like a blossoming lotus. Invisible streams of energy connected my fingertips to the needles, causing them to vibrate in a profound, mystical pattern. Amelia was completely mesmerized. It was like a door to a new universe had been opened before her. So this was what acupuncture could be. Her own skills, which she had been so proud of, were like a candle flame next to the sun. She greedily memorized my every movement, every word, trying to burn the image into her brain forever. Kneeling on the floor, Kyle felt waves of warm, pure energy flowing from the needles into his body, repairing his damaged systems, nourishing his depleted strength. His injuries were healing at an impossible rate. He could even feel the bottlenecks in his training starting to loosen, a blessing in disguise. The thought flashed through his mind, followed by a surge of ecstatic joy. You arrogant fool, Cole. Did you think this would make me submit? As soon as my power is restored, as soon as I get even stronger, you'll be the first one I kill. Feels good, doesn't it? Feel like you're about to have a breakthrough. A cruel smile twisted my lips. This technique can indeed restore you to full strength in 10 minutes. Maybe even push you to a new level. However, I've placed a little something on these 9 needles. It's called a Dragon Lock Curse. From this day forward, your power will be permanently sealed at its current level. You will never improve. Not 1 inch. For the rest of your life, you will live forever in my shadow. You will only ever be able to look up at me. Boom! It felt like a billion bolts of lightning had just struck inside Kyle's skull. Never improve. For a martial artist, for a man of destiny, that was a fate 1,000 times crueler than death. No. No, you're lying. He roared like a madman, trying to rip the needles from his back, only to find his body was completely paralyzed. You could try to fight it. I withdrew my energy and didn't spare him another glance. I walked over to Amelia, and before she could react, tucked a gold-embossed business card into the pocket of her lab coat. Want to learn? Come find me. With that, I turned and walked away. I left behind a broken protagonist kneeling on the floor, a brilliant divine doctor standing frozen, her face beat red and her heart pounding, and a pathetic ex-fiancée slumped in a chair, pale as a ghost, looking as if her soul had been ripped out. From this day forward, the script of this world would be written by me, Ethan Cole. After I left the hospital, Sterling City was turned upside down. King Corp, under the personal direction of Richard King, transformed into a ravenous beast and launched an all-out assault on Vance Cosmetics. They severed partnerships, poached clients, initiated hostile takeovers, and launched a brutal media campaign. The once shining star of Sterling City's business world was as fragile as a piece of paper in the face of absolute capital power. The stock price plummeted. Banks called in their loans. Employees resigned in droves. Suppliers lined up demanding payment. Isabella was at her wit's end, begging for help everywhere she could, but every door was slammed in her face. Everyone knew that Vance Cosmetics had offended an untouchable entity. No one dared to offer a lifeline. In just 3 days, Vance Cosmetics declared bankruptcy. Isabella went from being a high and mighty CEO to a debt-ridden social pariah. Her mansion and luxury cars were all seized by the court. The day she was evicted, dragging a single suitcase from the villa she had lived in for years, the sky opened up in a torrential downpour. She stood soaked to the bone, a pathetic figure in the rain, looking out at the familiar yet alien city, feeling true despair for the first time. She remembered the words the man had spoken to her in the hospital 3 days ago. Right now, you're not even qualified to be my dog. The words had become her reality. Meanwhile, Kyle Ryder's fate was no better. He regained his mobility, but the Dragon Lock Curse was like a mountain pressing down on his power, preventing him from cultivating even a sliver of new energy. He was crippled, a martial artist in name only, with no strength to back it up. In his desperation, he sought out Amelia, and even her grandfather, the old master of the Serenity Clinic. The verdict was always the same. The Dragon Lock Curse was an ancient, forbidden technique far beyond their understanding. It was unbreakable. Desperate, he remembered a sealed pouch his master had given him when he left the mountains, to be opened only in a life-or-death crisis. He tore it open, full of hope, only to find a single strip of paper inside. On it, 8 words were written in bold, elegant script. If you meet the Cole family, surrender immediately. In that instant, Kyle's world shattered. His revered master, his powerful sect, they were nothing but subjects who had to bow before the very family he had sought to challenge. He wasn't the chosen one. He was just a pathetic joke who had been played from the very beginning. He snapped. One moonless night, he stormed the gates of the Summit Estates, screaming that he was going to take me down with him. He didn't even make it to my villa's front door before the patrol guards broke all 4 of his limbs and dumped him in the city river. The Great Dragon King story ended without so much as a ripple. With Kyle and Isabella dealt with, my life finally found some peace. King Corp, now essentially the Sterling City branch of my family's holdings, was thriving under Richard King's management. As for me, I settled into a comfortable retirement of drinking tea and fishing. Occasionally, Amelia would visit my villa under the guise of academic exchange. She would bring homemade pastries and look at me with those big, curious eyes, asking questions about ancient medical techniques. I would patiently offer her some pointers, finding it amusing to watch this future medical legend diligently taking notes like a first-year student. One afternoon, I was fishing by the pond in my backyard. "Mr. Peterson approached quietly from behind. "Young master, we've located Isabella Vance." "Oh, I didn't even look up. Where is she?" "After the bankruptcy, she took a job as a hostess at a nightclub to pay off her debts. A wealthy businessman took an interest in her, but she refused his advances. He had her beaten. She's in a hospital now." Mr. Peterson's tone was completely flat. My fishing rod twitched. A large koi was on the line. I reeled it in, unhooked the shimmering fish, and tossed it back into the pond. "Give her enough money to pay off her debts," I said calmly. "Then get her out of Sterling City, and make sure she never comes back." Mr. Peterson paused. "Young master, are you?" "I just find it annoying to have her in my vicinity," I said, standing and stretching. "She's an ant. There's no need to waste any more time on her." "Yes, I understand." Mr. Peterson bowed and departed. I looked out at the glittering surface of the pond. The sun was warm, the breeze was gentle. To be reborn into a story and crush both the hero and the heroine. It was a pretty damn good feeling. Life is short, party hard. The old poets knew what they were talking about. 1 month later, throughout Sterling City, and indeed the entire region, whispers circulated about a mysterious Mr. Cole. No one knew where he came from or what he looked like. They only knew that with a flick of his wrist, he had seized control of King Corp and annihilated Vance Cosmetics. His name became a taboo topic in high society. And the man himself, me, was currently lounging on the deck of a private yacht in swim trunks and sunglasses, soaking up the sun. Amelia, in a flowing white sundress, sat beside me, carefully peeling an apple. Her cheeks were flushed from the sun, and the way she looked at me was a mixture of worship and adoration. "Ethan, open up." She held a small slice of apple to my lips. I obliged, enjoying the service. Just then, Mr. Peterson approached, holding a satellite phone. "Young master, a call from the main family estate in the capital. The old master wishes to speak with you." My eyebrows shot up. Finally, I took the phone. A stern, aged voice came through the line. "Ethan, have you had enough fun in that backwater city?" "Just about," I replied lazily. "Good. When you're done playing, come back to the capital," the old man said with a hint of amusement. "I heard you broke off the engagement with that useless girl." "Good. Save me the trouble of doing it myself. The family has already found a new match for you. A young lady from the Lin family in the capital. I hear she's a legendary beauty with a gentle temperament. A perfect match for you." Before I could reply, I felt a sharp pinch on my side. I turned to see Amelia looking at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and jealousy. I laughed. I spoke into the phone. "Grandfather, I appreciate the thought, but you don't need to worry about my marital affairs." "Oh, and why is that? Found someone yourself?" "You could say that." I looked at Amelia, pulling her into my arms. As she let out a surprised squeak, I spoke into the phone. "I'm perfectly capable of finding my own woman. This small pond of Sterling City is getting boring. I'll be back to the capital, but not just yet." I hung up the phone and looked down at the blushing beauty in my arms. I lowered my head and kissed her. The sea breeze blew past, warm and salty. A new story was just beginning. A man should control his own destiny, conquer the world before him, and the woman by his side. End.